There are 10 techniques being used on you right now. Not by a robed leader in a compound somewhere far away. By people in your life, your boss, your partner, your community, your church. You have already fallen for at least 8 of them. And here is the thing that makes it worse. The smarter you are, the harder you fall. Here is every single one, and exactly what is happening beneath the surface. You are sitting in a hotel conference room. The chairs are slightly uncomfortable. Everyone around you is nodding. Everyone smiles. You feel something is wrong, but you cannot name it. You look around for one person who sees what you see. There is no one. So you do what intelligent people do. You turn inward. You start to wonder if the problem is you. That confusion is not a coincidence. It was built, piece by piece, and it started long before that room. I am going to walk you through 10 techniques cult leaders use to trap intelligent, capable, high-functioning people, and I am saving the most disturbing one for last. These are not ancient methods from history books. They are precise psychological tools being used today in boardrooms, bedrooms, and houses of worship. The people who use them count on you never learning their names. You are about to learn all of them. Love bombing. Love bombing. You've probably heard the term, but if no one has ever explained it properly, you may have already survived it without knowing what hit you. Most people think love bombing is just someone being too nice too fast. Excessive compliments, constant attention. That is not it. Here's what's actually happening. Love bombing is not affection, it is calibration. The leader studies you first. They find the exact shape of the hole inside you, the validation you never got, the belonging you always wanted, the feeling of being truly seen, and they fill it perfectly, immediately. You meet them and feel chosen, like the universe finally sent someone who understands. That feeling is real. What created it is not. It was engineered from the first conversation. You remember the early days, how everything felt electric, how they made you feel more alive than anyone ever had. You told your friends about it, and even they were impressed. 6 months later, that warmth is gone, and you are working twice as hard to get back a feeling that was never meant to last. It was bait, and it worked exactly as designed. They did not fall in love with you, they fell in love with your need, and they weaponized it. So what do? Notice what you were feeling in the first 2 weeks. If someone makes you feel irreplaceable before they truly know you, they are not seeing you. They are setting a hook. Real connection builds slowly. What floods in overnight was manufactured overnight. You are not cold for being cautious. You are clear. Charismatic vision. Charismatic vision. Everyone has met someone like this. The person in the room who just seems to radiate something. You find yourself leaning in. You find yourself wanting them to notice you. Most people think charisma is a personality trait, a gift, something you are either born with or not. That is not it. Here's what's actually happening. Charisma in a cult leader is a delivery system for certainty. They are not more interesting than other people. They are more certain. And certainty is the most intoxicating drug on earth, especially when you're confused about your own life. You walk in carrying questions. They walk in with no questions at all. Your brain fills that gap and calls it leadership. It is not leadership. It is performance, and the audience is you. You sit in the front row. You take notes. You feel something shift in your chest, like finally someone has the answers. You go home and replay what they said. You start quoting them to your friends. You do not realize you have stopped forming your own opinions because theirs feels so much cleaner than yours ever did. They did not earn your trust, they borrowed your doubt. So what do? Separate the message from the confidence. Ask one simple question. Can this person explain why they believe what they believe, or do they just believe it louder than everyone else? Anyone can perform certainty. Not everyone has earned it. You are allowed to require proof. Social isolation. Social isolation is one of the most quietly effective tools in the manipulation playbook, and it almost never looks like what you think. Most people picture isolation as something dramatic: armed guards, cut-off phones, a compound in the middle of nowhere.
That is not it. Here's what's actually happening. It does not start with a command, it starts with a comment, one quiet sentence. They don't really understand you like we do. You nod, you half agree. It sounds like loyalty, it feels like belonging. 6 months later, you realize you have not called your best friend in weeks, and every step away from them felt like your own idea. It was not your idea, it was a slow, deliberate edit of your life, of your people, of your exits. You do not notice it while it is happening because it is framed as growth. The old friendships feel smaller now. The old version of you feels limited. The group feels like the only place that truly gets it. That feeling of elevation was the trap. They did not take your people. They made your people feel like the problem. The isolation was never about protecting you. It was about removing every person who might tell you the truth. So what do? Write down who you talked to less in the last 6 months since joining any new group, relationship, or community. Not who left, who you drifted from. The drift is the data, and if leaving the group means losing everyone you have left, you were never in a community, you were in a controlled environment. You do not owe anyone your loneliness. Cult jargon. Every group has its own language, special words for ordinary things. Members learn them fast and take pride in using them. Most people think jargon is just shorthand, efficiency, a shared vocabulary that builds connection. That is not it. Here's what's actually happening. Language controls thought. When you replace common words with group-specific terms, you do not just change how people talk, you change how they think. You cannot fully form a thought you have no word for. The group's language builds a wall around the group's reality and makes everything outside it feel foreign, confusing, spiritually inferior. The jargon is not vocabulary. It is a cage, built one word at a time, and by the time you realize you're in it, you have forgotten the words to describe the door. You start using the terms without thinking. In conversations with outsiders, the words feel right and their responses feel slow. You begin to feel slightly above the conversation. That slight elevation is not wisdom, it is the cage convincing you it is a throne. So what do? Translate. Every time you reach for a group term, stop and say the ordinary word out loud instead. If the substitution feels wrong, uncomfortable even, offensive, ask yourself why a normal word bothers you now. That discomfort is not spiritual sensitivity, it is the sound of a closed door. Your language belongs to you. The moment a group owns your words, they are close to owning your thoughts. Repetitive mantras. Repetitive mantras sound harmless. Affirmations, morning chants, group phrases repeated before meetings. It feels like discipline, like community. That is not it. Here's what's actually happening. Repetition does not reinforce truth. It bypasses the part of your brain that checks for truth. Say something enough times and it stops being a sentence. It becomes a feeling, a rhythm, a comfort. You do not decide to believe it, you simply forget to question it. And forgetting to question something is not the same as choosing to believe it, even though it feels identical from the inside. That is exactly the point. You have been saying the phrase for so long, it no longer even sounds like words. You do not notice you stopped examining it because the act of repeating it replaced the act of thinking about it. That replacement was the goal from the beginning. So what do? Write it down instead of saying it. One time, on paper, then look at it. Writing forces your critical brain back online in a way that speaking does not.
What survives scrutiny on paper is worth keeping. What collapses on paper was never true. It was only repeated. You are allowed to think about what you believe. Thinking is not disloyalty. Blind repetition is not faith. Required confessions. Required confessions sound spiritual. Accountability, transparency, radical honesty, growth. These are beautiful words. They are also the perfect cover. That is not it. Here's what's actually happening. When a group requires you to confess your fears, your doubts, your failures, your past, they are not creating a space for healing. They are building a file. Every secret you share becomes a data point. Every vulnerability becomes a lever. You cannot leave without knowing that information exists and that people who were once your community could become people who are now your accusers. The confession was never about healing, it was about containment. And it works because the most sincere people confess the most. The more honest you are, the more leverage they hold.
You shared things in that room you had never said out loud. It felt like freedom, like finally being known. And it was for about a week. Then you noticed the confessions being referenced, subtly, in correction, in comparison, in control. And you started editing yourself before you even opened your mouth. That edit was not humility, that was fear wearing the mask of community. So what do? Notice who benefits from knowing your secrets. Real community holds your vulnerability with care and never references it to manage you. Your scars are not collateral, and the moment they are treated like it, you are not in a community. You are in a negotiation you did not agree to enter. Us versus them. Us versus them, every group draws a line somewhere. The committed and the casual, the awake and the sleeping, the chosen and the lost. Here's what's actually happening. The us versus them framework is not a belief system, it is a door seal. Once you genuinely believe that people outside the group are dangerous or spiritually blind, leaving does not just mean leaving,